In 1963, a bookkeeper in Cincinnati named Margaret opened her pay envelope on Friday afternoon and counted $49 in net pay. The man at the desk beside her, same title, same duties, same years of service, same performance reviews, took home $82.50 every single week. Margaret did not complain. She did not quit. She went to the Metropolitan Credit Union on her lunch break and deposited $20 of her $49 into a savings account she had been building since 1958. Then she went back to her desk and finished the afternoon's work. By 1971, that account held $4,340. She owned her car outright. She had no debt. The man at the desk beside her had a newer car, a larger apartment, a better suit, and $200 in savings. He had earned more every single week for 8 years. She had built more. Every dollar he had earned above hers had disappeared into a lifestyle. Every dollar she had earned had been directed somewhere with a purpose. If stories like this matter to you, please subscribe. This channel recovers what history forgot to write down. Here are the money rules working women followed before equal pay. Rule 20. Save first, every single week, before anything else. A secretary in Philadelphia named Dorothy earned $54 a week in 1960. Before rent, before groceries, before anything else, she transferred $12 to her credit union savings account. Not because $12 was comfortable on $54. Because she had worked backwards from a goal, $3,000 saved by 1965. And $12 a week was the number that got her there. She reached it in 1964, 11 months early. The $12 was never optional. She had framed it as a fixed cost, and a fixed cost cannot be negotiated away by a difficult week. The savings deposit was not the last thing she did with her paycheck. It was the first. Rule 19. Bank at the credit union, not the commercial bank. The credit union allowed women to open accounts entirely in their own names, access loans without mail co-signature below certain thresholds, and build a credit history that was genuinely theirs, none of which the commercial bank reliably offered in the 1960s. A telephone operator in Detroit named Frances joined the Michigan Bell Federal Credit Union in 1959. Over the next 14 years, she took out 2 small personal loans, repaid both ahead of schedule, and built a credit record that let her apply for a mortgage in her own name in 1973. The year before, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act technically required banks to allow it. Her credit union record made it possible a year early. The credit union was not a consolation prize. It was the better institution. Rule 18. Never tell your coworkers what you earn. A legal secretary in Boston named Anne discovered in 1964 that she was earning $58 a week, while the mail clerk doing half her workload earned $94. Not through official disclosure, but because a male colleague accidentally left his pay stub on the shared copier. She did not confront her employer. She quietly began documenting her work output and productivity in detail, applied at competing firms, and accepted a position at a firm that paid $71 a week in 1965. She never told her old employer why she was leaving. She did not need to. She did not fight the gap. She priced herself out of it. Rule 17. Live on less than the paycheck suggests you can afford. A department store buyer in Chicago named Ruth earned $67 a week in 1962. Her rent was $38 a month, while colleagues in similar roles spent between $55 and $70. Her apartment was smaller and further from the office. She walked to work every morning and brought her lunch every day without exception. She had calculated that the gap between what she could afford to spend and what she chose to spend was the only savings mechanism available on a fixed income she could not negotiate upward. The gap was not large, but it was consistent. By 1968, her savings account held $6,200. She chose her rent based on what she wanted to save, not on what she could afford to spend. Rule 16. The lunch you bring is the investment you make. A nurse in Baltimore named Carol packed her lunch every working day from 1957 to 1974, 17 years without exception. The hospital cafeteria lunch cost 65 cents in 1957. Her packed lunch cost approximately 12 cents in ingredients. The daily saving was 53 cents. Across roughly 240 working days a year, she saved $127 annually from this single decision alone. Across 17 years, the lunch discipline freed up $2,159, which she consistently redirected to her savings account without fail. She had done the arithmetic in 1957 and understood that the cafeteria lunch was not a 65-cent decision. It was a $2,159 decision spread across 17 years, and she had made it before she ever opened the cafeteria door. She did not bring lunch because she could not afford the cafeteria. She brought it because she could see what the cafeteria actually cost. Rule 15. Build the emergency fund before you build anything else. A school teacher in Minneapolis named Jean set a target in 1961. 3 months of expenses saved before redirecting any money toward longer-term goals. 3 months of expenses for Jean was $420. She reached that target in 1963. Only then did she begin building toward anything else. Before the emergency fund existed, she could not afford to say no to anything her employer asked because she could not afford to lose the position. After it existed, she negotiated a classroom assignment she actually wanted because she knew she could survive without income if necessary. It was not necessary. The emergency fund was not a savings goal. It was the foundation that made every other decision possible. Rule 14. The boarding house was the first investment property. A telephone operator in Pittsburgh named Helen purchased a 6-bedroom house in 1959 for $8,400 with a down payment she had saved over 7 years. She lived in one room and rented the other 5 to working women at $12 a week each. Her 5 rental rooms generated $60 weekly, more than her telephone company take-home pay. By 1965, the rental income had paid off a significant portion of the mortgage, and she had directed the surplus toward the principal. She retired from the telephone company in 1971 at 53, living entirely on rental income from a property she owned outright. She bought the house with savings. The house paid her salary back within 6 years. Rule 13. Join the investment club. A group of 7 school teachers in Columbus, Ohio, formed an investment club in 1961, each contributing $15 a month to a shared fund. They researched companies together on weekends, voted on purchases, and reinvested every dividend rather than distributing it. By 1970, their collective portfolio had grown to $11,400. Each member had contributed $1,620 in total capital over 9 years. The portfolio had returned more than 7 times that amount. None of them had received any formal investment education from any institution. They had taught each other by doing it together every month for 9 years. 7 teachers, $15 a month, $11,000 in 9 years. Rule 12. Negotiate the title, not just the salary. A billing supervisor in New York named Joan accepted a title promotion in 1965 without a corresponding salary increase. Her employer framed it as a significant opportunity. She accepted it, but strategically rather than gratefully. The new title gave her documented supervisory experience that she immediately began building into her employment record. When she applied at a competing firm in 1967, she negotiated a starting salary, $14 a week higher than her previous pay, specifically on the basis of her supervisory experience. The title her employer had given her as a substitute for money became the precise leverage she used to extract the money from someone else. She took the title they offered instead of money. Then she used it to get the money. Rule 11. Send money home, but build something here first. A Filipino nurse in Los Angeles named Teresa earned $71 a week in 1966. Her family in Manila expected $15 a week. Teresa sent $12 and told her family it was $15. The $3 difference went into her savings account. She felt guilty about it for years. By 1972, that account held $2,184, money that existed because she had protected a small margin against an obligation that would otherwise have consumed every dollar she could spare. She sent what she could. She saved what she had to. Both things were true at the same time. Rule 10. The wardrobe is a system, not a collection. A legal secretary in San Francisco named Barbara maintained a rotation of 3 skirts, 4 blouses, and 2 pairs of shoes from 1962 to 1969. 7 years with no new major wardrobe purchases. She repaired, altered, and maintained what she had. Her annual clothing expenditure averaged $22. Her colleagues spent between $60 and $90. The difference was not trivial on a weekly take-home of $47. Her wardrobe was a budget item with a cap. She hit it and stopped. In 1963, the Equal Pay Act passed. It required equal pay for equal work, regardless of sex. The law had exceptions broad enough to drive a truck through. It excluded professional and administrative employees, and it allowed different pay for different conditions, a provision employers used immediately to reclassify women into separate job categories. A 1966 Women's Bureau study found the wage gap had narrowed by less than 1 cent on the dollar in the 3 years since the law passed. The working women continued building. Rule 9. Read the fine print on every benefit. A bookkeeper in Cleveland named Mary discovered in 1964 that her employer's pension required 15 years of continuous service to vest. Any woman who left to have children and returned would lose her pension credit and start again. Mary did not leave. She stayed for 22 years and collected a pension of $187 a month from 1978 until her death in 1999. The pension was part of every calculation she made for 22 years. She read the vesting schedule carefully in 1964. She understood exactly what it required. She made every professional decision around it for the next 22 years. Rule 8. The second job was Saturday morning. Working women in the 1960s who needed to supplement a suppressed wage maintained informal second income streams that were cash-based and invisible to their employers. Tutoring neighborhood children, taking in alterations, running informal bookkeeping for small local businesses on evenings and weekends. A teacher in Detroit named Rose tutored 4 students on Saturday mornings from 1961 to 1969 at $2.50 per hour per student. Her Saturday income averaged $10 a week. Over 8 years at approximately 45 weeks per year, the Saturday tutoring generated $3,600 in additional income. All cash, all hers, all directed to savings. Her school district did not know about it. Her savings account did. Her second job was invisible. Its contribution to her savings account was not. Rule 7. Know exactly what retirement looks like before you are 40. A nurse in Atlanta named Dorothy read her hospital's pension materials at 31 in 1962, calculated her monthly benefit at 65, and determined it would not be sufficient to live on. She opened a savings account specifically for retirement supplementation and contributed $8 a week from 1962 onward. When she retired in 1996, that account held $89,000. Not exceptional returns, just 34 years of $8 a week deposits, without exception. She did the retirement arithmetic at 31. She lived on the result at 65. Rule 6. Use the company's education benefit before they change their mind. A telephone operator in Seattle named Grace used Pacific Bell's tuition reimbursement program to complete an accounting degree between 1963 and 1967 while working full-time. When she applied for promotion in 1968, her degree was the distinguishing factor. Her salary increased from $61 to $84 a week. She had not paid for the education. Her employer had. She kept the qualification. They kept the bill. Her employer paid for the education. She kept the qualification. They kept the bill. Rule 5. The pension is not a plan. It is a starting point. A legal secretary in Washington, D.C., named Patricia calculated in 1965 that her pension would provide $140 a month at 65. Living costs for a single woman were approximately $180 a month. The pension would not cover it. She understood this at 32 and built supplementary savings around the gap for the remainder of her working life. When she retired in 1993, she had pension income, Social Security income, and a savings account that covered the difference. She planned around the pension's gap at 32. The gap was still there at 65, so was her savings account. Rule 4. Own the car outright or do not own one. A bookkeeper in Kansas City named Ellen chose not to own a car from 1958 to 1967, 9 years. She took the bus to work, walked to the grocery store, and borrowed a colleague's car for occasional larger errands. The money she did not spend on car payments, insurance, and maintenance over 9 years amounted to an estimated $2,800. In 1967, she purchased a 3-year-old car outright for $800 from savings. She drove it for 7 years without a payment. She calculated what a car payment would cost her over a decade and chose the bus instead. She calculated what a car payment cost over a decade. Then she chose the bus. Rule 3. Track every dollar for at least 1 year. A secretary in Phoenix named Helen began tracking every expenditure in a small notebook in January 1962. By December, she had a complete picture of her spending for the first time. She discovered $4.20 a month on items she could not account for, $6 more on clothing than she had estimated, and $2.80 on coffee she could have made at home. The total identified waste was $13 a month, more than her weekly savings deposit. 1 year of tracking found $13 a month she had not known she was spending. Rule 2. The goal is written down or it does not exist. A telephone operator in Chicago named Virginia wrote 4 numbers on an index card in 1959 and kept it in her purse for 11 years. Emergency fund, $500 by 1961. Car paid off, 1963. Down payment, $2,000 by 1966. Retirement supplement, $200 a month by 1970. She achieved all 4 targets. Not because the goals were easy. She was earning $52 a week when she wrote them. Because they were specific enough to work toward and visible enough to remember on the weeks when the deposit felt impossible and the goal felt distant. The goal written down with a date is a different object than the goal kept in your head. Rule 1. The wage gap was the challenge. The savings rate was the answer. Margaret, the bookkeeper in Cincinnati we started with, retired in 1978 at 53. She had earned less than every male colleague for 30 years and saved more than any of them. Her savings account held $31,400. Her pension paid $210 a month. She owned her apartment outright. The man beside her at the desk for 8 years, earning $82.50 to her $49, retired 2 years later with $8,200 in savings. She had earned less every week. She had built more with every dollar she kept. The wage gap was real. The savings gap ran the other way. The working women who understood the income could not be changed, chose to make what existed work harder than anyone expected. They tracked it. They protected it. They directed it with a precision. The men who earned more never needed to develop because they never had to. Leave a comment below with the one financial rule the working woman in your family lived by. The one she never called a strategy, but followed every week without fail. The one that only makes sense now that you can see the whole picture. And if she built something remarkable on wages that were never fair, leave that in the comments too. These stories are exactly what this channel is here to recover. Next up, some of the working women in this video built enough financial independence to start businesses, fund legal battles, and change the institutions that had underpaid them. A few of them built financial empires that history has almost entirely forgotten. Their names, their numbers, and the specific obstacles they dismantled are the next video.